Welcome to the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Lawyer Minds is an ever-growing ecosystem for all the resources modern lawyers need. As the official Lawyer Minds podcast, we'll discuss everything from the latest happenings on the website to industry news. Get ready. Here we go. It's time to dive into the minds of successful lawyers. Here are your hosts, Ted Thomas and Mike Campbell.
Mike, good to see you again.
We're back at it.
Tell you
Look
what,
at us.
Now we're cranking them out.
I mean, we're going to keep Ryan happy.
Yep.
And hopefully the people who are listening are going to get something out of this.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm looking forward to this one. This interview of Linda Lipsen's near and dear to my heart.
She's an amazing lady.
You know, it's so in the last several years that I've been an officer in AAJ, I've gotten to work closely with Linda and the staff at AAJ, and I've seen, really their passion for what they do. Pretty much everybody that works at AAJ could go out and get a job somewhere else in DC, making more money than they're making now. But they do it for their love of the organization and the mission of the organization. And I think Linda fits that bill.
Yeah, if the body of the organization is, all the members, the staff, and Linda is the heartbeat. Mm-hmm. Without them day in, day out, putting the time in to make sure that we, reach legislators, educate the community on our issues, we would have all kinds. We'd have national statute of limitations. We'd have medical malpractice reform at the national level. It'd be pretty crazy.
Oh, it's scary what you see that they deal with. And it's such a good team. They've had some really recent successes that I'm looking forward to Linda talking about. But I'm on Monday calls now with Linda and her team talking about what they're working on. And, they just had a big victory in the sexual assault, sexual abuse arbitration side. And I tell you what, the next Monday we were on a call and they were talking about the next thing. Yep. There was no resting on their laurels. It was, all right, what's next? And just incredible.
You've got really, two things. The big wins, the offense you see, we're on the offensive, we're pushing for really good things and we're getting things accomplished. More importantly, I think is the defense and the things you don't see. We get to watch a football game where there's a great stop at the goal line. One of the things we don't see and don't understand is how many of those stops at the goal line that the staff does on a almost daily basis to help us keep our doors open for our clients.
Yeah. And we talk about it with attorneys. I had lunch with one of my attorneys today and we talked about marketing and we talked about network and how important network is. Well, then you look at Linda and the team that she's built over there, and each one of them has this great network, at the Hill, at the White House, at the agencies. And so when there's a problem that comes up, AAJ is seen as a reliable source of information to where people on all the branches can call up, or not really judiciary so much, but all the executive and legislative branch can call up and say, hey, we're presented with this issue. What do we need to be looking out for? What are the ins and outs of changing the reg or changing this rule? I guess really I say all three, because Sue Steinman with AAJ is uber involved in the rules committees. And so that was one thing that I was really surprised at when I became involved as an officer of AAJ, how much we play in the rules committees and Sue's ability to keep bad rules from changing the game.
Yeah. And then when you consider the number of groups or organizations that those branches could turn to for advice, and you consider the forces that are opposed to us and the amount of resources that they have, it's just really remarkable what Linda and the staff, and then also, you all on the executive committee have done. So.
All right, now to our interview with Linda Lipsen. The Lawyer Minds podcast are brought to you by Gavel Video. Some companies do videography, but Gavel Video does high-quality cinematography to highlight your firm's successes. Also brought to you by Legal Insights, providing expert digital marketing for law firms. And finally brought to you by iLitigate, trial presentation software for trial lawyers by trial lawyers. And now to our program. And we're on with Linda Lipsen. Linda, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
So, Linda, I guess my first question is, you're one of the most influential lobbyists in the country. You started out, you went to law school. Tell us how you got into lobbying to start.
Well, it's actually a family business. My father was a lobbyist for the labor unions. My mother lobbied for the state of Hawaii. But for me, because both parents were lobbyists, I wanted to be a real lawyer. And so I went to law school, and after law school, I got a job as in a plaintiff's antitrust firm. And it was a crushing experience because they just put me in a room full of documents. Like nothing was online then. And I realized after about 8 months that the kind of change that I wanted to make was more systemic and not just for an individual small business that wanted relief using the antitrust laws. So it was a natural for me because I'd grown up around it, and I grew up around politics. My father worked for Lyndon Johnson as his chief advance man. He went all over the world for Lyndon Johnson.
Wow.
In those days, though, I think it's pretty interesting. People think that the campaign laws are awful now. Well, when in my dad's day, he was actually paid by the labor unions a salary, and he worked for Lyndon Johnson.
Oh,
so
wow.
they basically gave they gave my father to Lyndon Johnson.
Just an
And then
in
my
kind.
mother, it's crazy. I mean, It's just never happened now. But my mother actually worked for the Speaker of the House, was Carl Albert during Watergate. So she was in the middle of everything. And after she finished doing that, she got an amazing job lobbying for the state of Hawaii. And she represented 4 governors in DC. She had their Washington office in DC. So it was just a natural fit for me. My uncle also lobbied for a number of clients. My aunt did as well. So, in Washington, DC, we don't really, you might say we manufacture BS, but we don't make anything here. It's except government and policy. So it's I know it sounds strange in other parts of the country, but it's a logical place to land, particularly if you want to make a difference. Now, I never thought that lobbying was anything but virtuous, because my parents lobbied for good things. My father helped write the Civil Rights Act. He was, I could never figure out, like, why are people making fun of lobbyists, or why does it have a bad name? Because I always thought it should have a good name. So that's kind of the too long to get around a short story. But
It's kind of like lawyers, we think it's a virtuous profession as well. And, it's the butt of jokes, but.
Yeah, no, it really was. And for me, I always wanted to make a difference. That I grew up with that as a principle. Like if you're gonna spend your life doing something, you should make a difference. And it's just not for everyone. Some people are motivated by money, and some people are motivated by issues. It's just a different thing. And for me, it really landed on me that I get to do this work. I get to have a job that I can affect people's lives, and I can make them better. I can, whatever pain they're enduring, I can work to get a law passed and make whatever hardship they feel, make them feel better. So that's sort of why I did it.
So what was your first lobbyist job then?
Well, I actually, I always think that if you want to have a lobbying job, you should work on the Hill first. Mm-hmm. And so you should get a real, an understanding of how Congress works. And I was really so lucky. I mean, so lucky because my mother knew the rules of the Congress so well. So she gave me the best advice in the world. She said, they won't know that you don't know things unless you tell them. And I thought, that's really good. So then she said, if you're quiet, they're going to think you're smart. So I got this job for a member of Congress, and it was way above what I really should have gotten because I didn't know anything about what I was doing. And so my mother just said, if you have any questions, call me. And so it was kind of like Cyrano de Bergerac in a way. So I would call her, I go somebody's asking me to do a special order on such and such. What in the world is a special order? And so she would tell me, and then I would say something brilliant, but it was actually from her.
Yeah.
That's great.
So then I went after that. I went to law school, and I went to law school actually because as a woman, I really felt that you're not going to be taken seriously unless you have an advanced degree. And I wasn't sure that I was actually going to be a lawyer, but I knew I had to have an advanced because I wanted to get into the most interesting conversations. And I didn't think I could as a woman without having an advanced degree. So I went to this law school that was very clinically based. I had clients my first year to my third year. And I really thought, I don't want to do what my parents did. I want to be a real serious lawyer. And I just found maybe, the soul crushing job that I found, forced me to rethink things. And then I was able to, again, these jobs that you get as a young lawyer, a lot of it is just luck, like being in the right place at the right time. It's not because you're brilliant. It's not because, so I stumbled on this, this ad for Consumers Union, the publisher of Consumer Reports. And they were looking for legislative help. And I went, I knocked on the door, and I had this incredible interview with the fellow that ran the office. But he said, after this great interview, and I thought, this is like made in the shade. I'm getting this job. He said, we've hired someone already for this job, and sorry, because I really like you, but blah, blah, blah. And I thought, God, this is like dating. This is terrible. No. So the next thing that happened, though, that I waited like a couple of months, and it was just totally tragic. I couldn't find anything. And I got a call then from that guy who I had talked to, and the person who he had hired had a death in the family and couldn't take the job. Would I want it? So I, of course, said immediately yes. And I got this great job. And it was really interesting. I also learned they wanted me to do telecommunications law, which I found to be a crashing bore. I just, but I took the job because I didn't have another job. So they wanted me to do telecommunications law. And the first thing they wanted me to do was do something about access charges. I don't even know if you remember, the baby bells made you, anyway, it was about, I don't know, I want to say $30 a year or something for this access fee. And I want to make a difference here. I don't want to do this. So I don't know why I had the nerve to walk in and just say, there's so many other issues to work on. I need to work on healthcare and products liability.
Nice.
Because the products liability bill was pending, and it was, it was hot. People were really interested in it, and it was a legal issue. So I could use my law degree. So it's because this boss was like, oh, sure, whatever. Okay. So I ended up working to oppose a bill that Clinton was going to sign, actually. Wow. That was about, I don't know, it was about 500 pages. It was like a bill that would prevent anyone from recovering anything. It was whether you're injured by a machine tool or injured by a dangerous drug, whatever it was, you were not going to get anything under this bill. It was like a maze. And so we worked on it and the bill ended up, we got a veto from the president, which was fantastic. And anyway, long story short, 10 years after that, not 10 years, but I worked there for 10 years. And then ATLA had a committee that was looking for someone to take over from Alan Parker, who was the head of their public affairs team. And Alan had this theory of the case, which is don't let trial lawyers go to Capitol Hill because I don't know why, but don't let them go and do things in a very insular way. This was an approach. It wasn't anything I wanted to do. It was, talk to the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, talk to the head of the Speaker of the House, and talk to the majority leader. That's it, or the minority leader. That was it. I go, well, trial lawyers are great storytellers, and they have, they have the biggest heart in America. Why aren't we bringing them to Washington to talk about their clients and their stories and why it's important to maintain a rigorous justice system that is fair to all parties? And so I went on this incredible round of interviews. And honestly, I was so worried to take the job because I didn't want to do the kind of job that my predecessor had done, because I thought, boring, never want boring. And two, it's just, what a waste. I just didn't want to do it. And the trial lawyers at the time, the presidents and whatever, they met in this big thing. They said, no, we want to change. We really want to change. And I don't know that I believe them totally, but all of my friends just sort of just circled me and said, you have to do this. You have, because I was going to say no. You have to do this. And so I ended up obviously saying yes, and it's been a wonderful career choice for me.
So you're coming up on 30 years, right?
No, don't make me older than I am.
1993.
Don't say 30 years.
20
I still have
years.
some time.
You joined AAJ in 1993, right?
Okay. Don't say 30 years.
We're still in
I
the
never
second
thought I'd
decade.
stay longer than 5.
All right.
Actually.
All right. So tell me, so you've been with AAJ since 1993 and you became CEO in 2010, right?
Right.
So tell me, I guess, what is your most proud moment in AAJ? You've had a lot of successes, but what is your most proud?
Well, anytime you can bring a family to Washington that has endured an unbelievable harsh circumstance and have them tell their story to Capitol Hill and get a law changed that will benefit that family, that is a very proud moment. But for me, there was never any prouder moment than after 9/11, when honestly, so many people don't remember what the environment was after 9/11, but people were so scared because we all thought that this was going to happen again. Then, when we found out that the Capitol was targeted in DC, and of course, the Pentagon, we really thought it was just the beginning of something and we didn't know what it was. And there was a no-fly zone around the Capitol and around DC. There were no planes flying. So there was this eerie calm. And I remember that I got a phone call from the the CEO from American Airlines and United, I think it was United, who said, we're going up on Capitol Hill and we're not going to fly at all ever again unless we get complete immunity. Complete immunity. And so I said, well, just a minute. I think the Constitution has something to say about that. You can't just take away someone's rights without giving something back. You just can't. That isn't constitutional in this country. Mm-hmm. So I remember going to Capitol Hill that day, and the leader on the Democratic side was Dick Gephardt, and the leader on the Democratic side was Tom Daschle. And they were ready. Remember, Gephardt was from the state, Missouri, that had I think isn't it American that's in Missouri? What is it? TWA or what is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. TWA was in out of Kansas City. Yep.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. So he was like, we got to do something. We got to, or they're not going to ever fly again. It's going to tank the economy. The world's going to end. I mean, it was really scary. And it was very scary for me because I looked at those two leaders and they, you know how when you're a kid and your parents are scared and it scares the life out of you because they're never supposed to be scared. You know, they're supposed to be your protector. But these two leaders were off balance. And I remember I walked in with our consultant to their offices. And I said what I had said to the lobbyists from the airlines, that they couldn't do it. They had to provide something of value, et cetera. I said that to both Senator Daschle and Congressman Gephardt. And it was almost like, oh yeah, it's almost like they found their footing. They go, oh yeah, that's who we are. We're going to give something back to the people that died in those buildings and the people that were massacred in the Pentagon. We're going to give something back to them in the legislation. And then they said, write what we should do, like your idea. And so I called in the cab, we didn't have Ubers then. I called our legal team at the office and I said, write me a compensation scheme that is very fulsome and it really will help these victims move on with their lives. Okay, that was done. And, the person who I asked to do it was very like risk averse and didn't want to write it. I go, no, put it down. And so then we faxed it. Remember faxes?
Yep.
We faxed it to both leaders. And they immediately, regular order was suspended. They immediately put it in legislative text. And within a week, that thing that was a dream was considered on the floor of the United States House and the United States Senate.
That's incredible.
At the time, it was an amazing thing. It didn't have no committees, no hearings, no anything. At the time, though, they went to the day that they voted in the House and the Senate. The reason why this passed with just almost unanimous was because the members went to the World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. They had a field trip and they were so moved by what they saw that they came back. This will never happen again, maybe this confluence of these kind of details. They came back and they were just about to vote for it when Senator Nichols, who was a senator from Oklahoma, went to the floor and said, if we do this, trial lawyers are going to make money, they're going to make all this money from it. And that was not what we were thinking at all. So this group of people that were in the leadership at the time called an executive committee meeting on the phone while Nichols is actually talking about trashing trial lawyers. And it seemed like within 5 minutes to a person, the executive committee voted to make to represent every single family member for free. And then we sent fax again, because that's what we had then. We sent a message back to the floor as this guy is still like screaming about trial lawyers, that we would represent everybody for free. And we did. And so of all the things that we've ever done, to me, we had lawyers from most every state doing this work. It was hard work because, the wife number one would come in, another family member would come in. We had to discern whether they were really family. They were complicated. Lawyers gave up their time, their money. Several moved to New York to do this work. They gave up their practices to do this work. And I guess Leo Boyle said it best. Leo Boyle was the president at the time. He said, we were called to action as a country. Everyone was feeling so patriotic, and we couldn't clean the buildings, and we couldn't, we couldn't, there were all these things that we couldn't do, but we knew how to represent people. And that's what we were going to do. So that, I don't think I don't think of all the things, and there are a lot, I don't think you can get a prouder moment of that when all these lawyers from all over the country spent so much time and so much of their own resources making sure that these folks that had their family members killed or harmed in this tragic terrorist attack, that they could move on with their lives. And that's what they did.
I figured you were going to answer it that way. I've talked to you enough times about the 9/11 project and trial lawyers care to know that was going to be your answer. So also my follow-up is going to be what I thought your second answer might be, which is your recent victory on the sexual harassment and sexual abuse arbitration bill, and that your victory on that. So tell us about how that came about.
Well, forced arbitration is a gimmick that was used, I don't know, started about like 15, 16 years ago, where a lawyer from a law firm thought that you could basically stick in some language in a clause in a take it or leave it contract, and you would never have to go to court again. You'd go to an arbiter that the defendant company decides who should be the arbiters, and the system's completely rigged. And, we never thought that the Supreme Court would bless this are you kidding? The Arbitration Act was only supposed to be businesses against businesses, not your grandmother against a business. That was never what it was. But the court said, okay, that's fine. So, we actually, we have a big bill. Actually, it's going to be considered tomorrow on the floor at noon, Eastern Standard Time. And it basically says that you can have forced arbitration, but it has to be voluntary, and it has to be decided upon after the dispute occurs. Mm-hmm. So, but we realized, given the nature of the Congress, because this is all math, you just have to count your votes, that maybe there was something inside of that we could do and be successful at it. And so we also, actually, as a woman, I don't know, I almost can tell you this. I don't know any woman that hasn't been sexually harassed at work in some way. It's just what you expect almost. And so what has happened is that, so we were able to encourage a bill to be written that would end forced arbitration in sexual harassment, sexual assault cases. And Gretchen Carlson, who was a spokesperson for Fox, was a newscaster for Fox, famously sued Fox and discovered that she had a forced arbitration agreement. And then she turned around and sued Roger Ailes personally. And so she was able to prevail only because she could sue Roger Ailes personally. But then she realized that this system is rigged and unfair. And so she became the messenger almost. And because she worked at Fox, she was listened to by the Republican side, and it's a lesson that I always have to learn, that the messenger is really important. Mm-hmm. You really have to think that through, because we're all so busy. We're not going to listen to certain people, and we're going to listen to other people. Anyway, she was very involved, and then Me Too happened. And so you have this environment that suddenly there was a focus on, what really happens at work. And so, we went about the process. We had hearings, and during this fight, there were 4 women that had just horrendous sexual assault and sexual harassment experiences that wanted to come and tell their stories, but they had a secrecy agreement and were not permitted. So they were subpoenaed. And so all 4 of them went to the Judiciary Committee and told these harrowing stories. And it just changed everything. It opened up everything. And the bill passed with, on the House side, more Republicans voted for it than didn't. And Democrats all voted for it. And in the Senate, it passed by voice vote. And so I was privileged, like every once in a while I pinch myself, because sometimes I get to do really fun things, like go to the White House for a signing ceremony. And it was just fantastic. And you saw these women that testified and put their lives on the line. And, it's a wonderful thing. So anyway, so that was I was very proud of that. And also want to say that so many lawyers worked on this over the years. I mean, we had the Women's Caucus came to Washington over and over again to lobby for this. And, it really, success has so many authors. And we really, I think together we did a very good thing. 60 million contracts have to be changed.
I've in looking at the 75th anniversary video and going back and doing the history of the organization, it's both interesting and sad that the organization was originally founded because the founders had a rigged system in workers' comp. And they decided we're going to do a national association to fight against this rigged system, which then was only workers' comp. Here we are 75 years later, and you and your team at AAJ are still fighting against rigged systems. And just the latest one happens to be arbitration.
That's always going to be true. So the one thing that is so maddening is the defendant lobby, the tobacco companies, the drug companies, the car companies, the machine tool builders, whatever, on and on and on and on. They have unlimited venues. Like if they don't like something, they can go to their state house and say, we need state tort reform. And if they don't get it there, they can go to the federal Congress and say, we need state tort reform. And if they don't get it there, they can go to the agencies and they can get it there. And if they don't get it there, they can go to the judicial conference and they can get it there. Mm-hmm. And so we are just one organization fighting all of these things. Some of our lawyers have no idea. I mean, it really is. Somebody asked me, Tad, this is funny. Somebody said, what would your team do if they didn't work at AAJ? And I really thought about it a long time. And I go, I don't know, Navy SEAL.
Yeah, maybe? Don't ask them that question because they'll see how good it is other places.
I know. I go, no, but like Navy SEAL, it's like put on your bulletproof vest, go to work. Right. It's going to be some crap that flies over the transom and you just got to fight it back.
I just think of like a dike with all the water flooding against it, and you guys have only so many thumbs, and you're doing your best to just plug different holes, but it's just never.
But we do.
The water never stops.
They underestimate us, though. That's
right.
Plus, their organization is led by a girl.
Well, and I love the Navy SEAL example because I think about you telling the story about Julia Duncan and Sarah Rooney going in on the driverless car bill with all of the tech companies and all of these guys with so much more money and these high-powered lobbyists. And, Julia and Sarah had them outgunned,
No, that's really true. That's really true. They're really smart. People get lazy here in DC. They don't have to work as hard. So, I mean, we have a really great team. It's a privilege to get to work with them every day. I'll tell you that.
Well, Linda, I just in closing, I guess I'm going to give you your opportunity to do a closing argument. There's a lot of lawyers out there that, for one reason or another, are not yet members of AAJ because, they just don't know what we do. So if you were to give your closing argument as to why someone needs to be a member of our organization, what's your closing?
I got to tell you, you don't want to be an observer of your own life. You got to participate in your life. And this is your life. I mean, you're fighting the good fight every single day, but you have to get some insurance, because if you're successful, the corporate lobby is going to lay in wait for you, and they're going to try to eliminate your cause of action. Mm-hmm. So you have to join the organization, not just not just AAJ, but the state organization as well. And be mindful about it, and understand that, it's we need resources to do the things that we are doing. We never need it as much, because, if you're right, you don't need to have as much, because it costs more to lie. It just does. So, but we need to have enough. And so, there are a lot of people that sit on the sidelines and don't participate. And it really, it hurts my feelings sometimes, frankly, because I think, like, if you only knew, like, walk with us in our shoes for one day, and you would see what this is like to fight these fights. But honestly, we love a good fight. And because we represent you, we have a lot of them. So thank you so much for inviting me to this.
Thanks for having me, Linda. And I was going to pop a trick question on you and ask you who your current favorite officer is, but I won't do that today.
Well, Tad, it's you. You know that.
Of course. Thanks so much for being on, Linda. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Mike, what do you think?
I could sit and talk with Linda for hours. Just to hear her stories, whether it's, like her dad and her mom, the things they saw, the history they were a part of, and then the history that she was a part of. The 9/11 thing is a story that doesn't get told enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
It's a master class in values and principles. AAJ would not have had fault. There would not have been in fault with AAJ for her to say, you know what, we'll go along with this because of the crisis that's taking place. And instead it was like, hold on, shifting sands, we got to find some sort of solid ground to stand on. And then for the executive board to say, we'll do this for free. It's just,
yeah, I guess being involved in the organization, it doesn't surprise me a bit, because knowing some of the leaders that were around back then when this was all going on, it's just like them to do something like that. And that's what makes me happy to be part of an organization that, that's the makeup. That's the cloth these people are cut from.
It is standing on the shoulders of giants. And I'm sure they'll tell you that they stood on the shoulders of giants too. And then to have someone who knew them and then knew people in our present day that are doing the same things, like you and the rest of the executive committee are doing, especially with this forced arbitration bill. It's just awesome. We could have gone for hours on that.
No, and we could interview 100 people at AAJ or 50 people at AAJ that are like Linda, have spent so many years at the organization fighting these fights. And I don't remember if I talked to you about this, but we have our Monday calls with Linda and her team, and not just our outside consultants, but all the internal people, and the fights that they have to fight on a daily basis. And picking up phone to call congressmen and showing up in their offices and explaining to them why this is the law or why this should be the law, and the ins and outs of everything that they're doing. It's like this endless perpetual fight, and but they're so good at it.
And you have to have such a high degree of credibility to be able to build these lasting relationships, especially in a place like DC, where congressmen and women and have long memories. They know if we weren't good on our word in the mid 2000s, in a state where you've got term limits, some of that institutional knowledge disappears, and maybe you could get away with stuff. Now in Missouri, it's different because we have built up that credibility over generations, and people just know that MAT it's a good organization. The people at the top can be trusted. Right. But my goodness, the amount of credibility that you have to have in a place like DC, I think just speaks volumes to the work that the organization has done.
Yeah. Mike, another good podcast. I'll see you. Talk to you next time.
Sounds good.
That wraps another episode of the official Lawyer Minds podcast. Please consider subscribing to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Explore the other content Lawyer Minds has to offer and engage with us on social media. Your feedback on the show and ideas for future shows